Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Hong Kong and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. So I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, a good few different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are pretty solid all round, but I find their beers to be really quite light and drinkable most of the time, and it really works for the type of beers that they brew. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one that I've had from them many times before. It's one of their staple beers and one that I just kind of haven't gotten around to making a review of here on the channel. So this video has been a long time coming, but it's a style that I quite enjoy, one that is quite popular at the moment, and one that I know that these guys can do very, very well. So needless to say, I'm very curious to try this beer in a kind of review situation, so hopefully it's as good as I remember, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head over to Kwun Tong in East Kowloon, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Hong Kong Beer Company. So this particular beer is called Hazy Daze. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this one is one of their kind of staple beers. This one is done year round. Probably my favourite IPA from these guys is the Hey Hey Hazy, but yeah, Hazy Daze is the one that is their kind of, I guess you could call this a core range beer, although I don't know if the guys at Hong Kong Beer Company would quite agree with that. But yeah, this is one that you can find very, very easily and year round. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. Definitely nice to get around to reviewing this one for you here on the channel. I need to try and get their other core beers done over the next wee while as well. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hong Kong Beer Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Hong Kong playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regularly, of course, since I am based here now, and do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Hong Kong Beer Company then. So, Hong Kong Beer Company, the history goes back to 1995 when it was established originally as South China Brewing Company. So the man behind this original iteration of the brewery was David Haynes, who is originally from Colorado and is a clinical psychologist by trade, but also a big beer enthusiast. So his wife worked as a China analyst in one of the big financial firms, and she encouraged him to go for it and found his own company. So he went to the US to visit different microbreweries and do some fact finding, and then came back to Hong Kong to kind of get started. But around this time, David encountered a guy called Peter Bordeaux, who was the president of Sazerac, quite a major American beverage distributor. And after asking a lot of questions, Peter agreed to come on board and help finance the startup. So it took them about a year to navigate the Hong Kong bureaucracy, but they finally managed to get the legal right to brew beer, and they opened the brewery in the Vita Tower in Aberdeen on the south of Hong Kong Island. They released their first beer, which was called Crooked Island Ale, and this beer basically spread by word of mouth to the different pubs across Hong Kong. So the brewery had a few years of success, but then it started to sputter, and eventually it became a contract brewery. The company was then acquired by Harmony Assets in 2003, and the name at this point was changed to Hong Kong Beer Company, and Harmony were distributing the beers through their bar chain El Grande, but production was very small, only about 120,000 litres per year by 2009, and the quality of the beer apparently continued to suffer a little bit, and they eventually ended up contract brewing their beers elsewhere. But later on in 2013, the brewery was purchased by Devin Otto Kimball and Daniel Flores, who are the team behind Brewworks, brewery and restaurant down in Singapore, and they stayed involved with the company up until 2020, but under their guidance, the brewery was completely revamped from the ground up. So they brought in brewmaster Simon Pesh, who had previously worked for Pyramid Brewery in Berkeley over in California, and he stayed with the company until 2018. So they relocated the brewery to Chai Wan on the eastern part of Hong Kong Island, and they were operating a 20 US barrel brew kit there, which is around 3,200 litres, and this one came from JN VW Systems, and today they're producing in the region of 600,000 litres of beer per year. But in 2020 there was another change in ownership, and the current brew team is headed by Philip Rankmore and Matt Bradley under the guidance of James Waters. Philip is really well known in Hong Kong actually, but he's originally from Sydney and originally studied chemical engineering and later gained his brewing diploma from the Institute of Brewing and Distilling before going to work in Korea for Goose Island and then for Budnamu. But he also spends time teaching brewers in Korea and Hong Kong from what I understand. But last year in 2024 they relocated production again to Kwun Tong in East Kowloon, and they've been working to build up this facility over the last few months. But as of April 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced about 95 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And if people were to ask me about this brewery, these guys always do like really smooth and very, very drinkable beers. They've always got a hell of a lot of flavour, but the kind of signature of Hong Kong Beer Company, I think, is just the mouthfeel of the beers. They're just so drinkable. Even the big Maipo Imperial Stouts just have this lovely smoothness to them. So yeah, this is one of the Hong Kong breweries you really need to check out. Hey Hey Hazy is my personal favourite, but yeah, Hazy Daze is very good, and Maipo, it's always worth trying the Maipos if you can come across, if you happen to come across those. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Hong Kong Beer Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at this beer itself. I'm very curious to try this one again because it has been a little while, but this is from a very fresh batch from what I understand. So yeah, I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. You can see this one is a little bit different in terms of its style from the other Hong Kong Beer Company beers, but I'll just let you have a little look at the Hong Kong Beer Company badge. I do like that because it really is, it's quite modern, but it's also kind of quite old and Chinese in a way. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there. This one incidentally is a 330 milliliter can, and it does say something on the side here. It says, smooth and juicy with a soft mouthfeel and rounded bitterness, brimming with intense aromas and flavours from an abundance of premium hops in rotating combinations. So yeah, Hazy Daze will, it will change flavour very slightly in terms of its fruitiness and things, but generally speaking, I think you get some. Yeah, it is quite similar in a way. You only get kind of very subtle differences, I think, between the batches, but it's always pretty good. But like I said earlier, this one comes in at 6.5% ABV. I'm drinking this one in April of 2024, and it is very fresh actually. So let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. Very nice to finally get around to reviewing this particular beer. So let's do this. There we go. That looks good. Nice head on it as well, actually. Poured very, very nicely. So, there we go. Anyway, so before the head disappears on this one, you can see I gave it quite an aggressive pour right enough, but it poured with a little bit over a finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream coloured head there. I wouldn't call that one perfect white, but there, if I bring it up to the camera, you can see that quite nicely. But yeah, colour wise, this one is lovely. A very kind of bright yellow mango and pineapple juice colour. I think it looks a little bit mixed, yeah. But yeah, very nice bright yellow colour to this one. It looks absolutely great. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to beers in the IPA style category. But all in all, it looks pretty damn nice. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, but one thing I will say about this one, if you look at this, the level of this one is pretty damn soupy and gloopy. The level of haze in this is pretty damn impressive for a 6.5%er. So remember, the level of haze in these New England IPAs depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. And of course that can vary from beer to beer and brewery to brewery. But yeah, I think this one, for being a 6.5%er, that's a pretty impressive level of soupy gloopiness that's coming out of this one. I think we can leave it at that for the appearance. We've said everything we really need to. The only other thing to add is that the head is kind of faded away to be a sort of thinner foamy layer. Then you've got that nice big foamy ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, let's go on then and do the aroma section of this video and see how this one smells. I think this will be quite nice. Oh yeah. Feels familiar, but it's just always very, very nice. I think actually in this glass, because usually when I've drank this one, it's usually at Craftissimo over in Shun that I drink this one, and you drink it out of the plastic cups there. But yeah, having it in the tulip glass, I think it comes across as a lot more kind of floral and aromatic. That it kind of goes to show you I like this glass, because it usually just helps you pick out the aromas that little bit more, and it's a very well rounded glass, the tulip, as well. You can drink pretty much any style from this. But yeah, the aroma of this beer, I think, is really damn nice. So it's a big thumbs up from me in that particular regard. But yeah, gives you everything you want. Very, very. I'm noticing that it's very fragrant. It's very floral. The malty character in this one seems to be a little bit more wheaty leaning, I would say. And then, yeah, you've got lots of bright, juicy, fruity notes coming out of it. So, yeah, let's break that down then and describe it for you more in depth, as we always do. So, in terms of New England IPAs, there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of things for me. So you have the rye leaning grainy side and the kind of farmhousey yeasty type character. Those 2 elements are a bit more common in New England brewed New England IPAs, because this style did of course start off as the farmhouse IPAs. I was talking about that in my Spyglass videos recently. And of course that whole thing kind of started. The sort of more farmhousey leaning New England IPAs for me are the Alchemist ones. But yeah, you've also, since the style has moved to other places and evolved a little bit, it's more about wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. So yeah, for me, this one, if you let it settle, just like this, you get a nice little bit of you can smell the kind of more barley malt side of it and the oaty side of things. But if you sugar it up a little bit more, you start to get a wee bit more of the wheat and the kind of floral notes coming out of it. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, lovely fresh white bready bread crust coming out of it. Yeah, lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. Little bit of wood, little bit of cracker, as you very often get. On top of that, there's a teeny little layer of there's a very slight wholemeal brown bread, but the vast majority of the malt base in this one is like fresh, fluffy barley malt white bread. I'm getting a lot of that out of this one. So for me, that's very, very obvious in this particular beer. So yeah, lots of fresh, fluffy white bread coming out of this one. On top of that, you can smell like a more dense wheaty white bread as well. And there's a bit of bitiness to the wheat at the back of the nose, but you can smell the smoother side of that more dense wheaty white bread further forward. And yeah, you've got a really nice, you've got a lovely little bit of oatiness kind of sitting on top of that. The oatiness that comes out of this one, I think, is really nice. So yeah, lovely kind of creamy oaty character coming out of it. Yeah, so lovely creamy oats in there. There's a little bit of dryness to some of the oats as well, actually, and there's a tiny little bit of sweetness to this one. I don't, maybe more biscuity I don't know if I'd go as far as calling it like Werther's Original Butter Candy Butterscotchy, but yeah, it's more like a kind of bready, it's more like a kind of biscuity, shortbready sort of thing that's coming out of this. So yeah, the way that everything pieces together in this one is really very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me on the malty side of things. The yeasty side of this beer is quite easy going as well, I would say. So for me, the yeasty side of this one, it's kind of like, it has a little bit of an almost crackery character to it, but it's very sort of yeah, I would say it's very kind of white. It's got a lot of like white bready character to it. So yeah, quite sweet white bread, a little bit of cracker, a little bit of woodiness to it, and yeah, just a little bit more bread crust. So the way that that goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Gets a big thumbs up from me on that as well. The malty and yeasty side of this beer is very smooth, very inviting. So yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. I think we've covered everything we need about the malty yeasty side of the beer. So as I've said in many an IPA review before, there are 3 types of hoppings that you can do with your IPAs. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you the majority of your bitterness and a deep, dank sort of green component. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of your wort boil. It's got a wee bit of bitterness, but mainly it gives you flavour and aroma, gives you a very bright green component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that one is all about flavour and aroma, and again it gives you a very kind of bright green component. So yeah, the way that everything kind of pieces together in this one, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, the green component for me on this one, it's very bright, actually. It's very bright and it's very smooth, actually. So this beer is not going to blow the head off you in terms of its IBU count, and you know, from all the times I've had it, it never has. But there's a teeny little bit of earthiness in there, but lots of nice floral aromaticity. I wouldn't say there's pine resin in this one, and there's a good little bit of like zesty, grassy character as well. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really, really quite nice. Yeah, aroma-wise, the green component is very, very nice, but then the fruitiness of this is just so juicy and inviting. So let's focus on that fruity side of things just to round off the aroma section of the video. So yeah, for me, fruity wise, this one is really, really nice. Something very familiar about it as well. I'd love to know which hops are in this one, but as I say, they're always kind of rotating the hops a little bit, but they've always got a good balance between that tropical side and that slightly more orangey leaning sort of thing. So I think it's something like Idaho 7 and maybe a little bit of Mosaic or whatever that's in here. So yeah, for me, there's a little touch of peach to this one, just that little bit of peachy sharpness in there, but a lot of juicy mango, apricots, papaya, pineapple, these sort of things. Yeah, lots and lots of juicy mango, papaya, apricots, a little bit of pineapple, all of this sort of stuff. And then yeah, there's a wee bit, as I say, I get a little bit of a kind of more strong, juicy orange out of this one. As it could be, I wonder if it's a little bit of Eclipse actually, because it just has that, you know, the Eclipse can give you that wee bit of kind of, it gives you a slightly more oily but very juicy orange at the same time, and also a few other things like a wee touch of pineapple and stuff. And I would, you know, if it's always difficult to play guess the hops these days because there's so many of them. But I would be tempted to say Idaho 7 and Eclipse in this one. That would be a really interesting combination, because it just smells that wee bit more complex than you're going to get from, say, Citra and Mosaic or Galaxy and Mosaic or something like that. Plus the pungency that you normally get from Galaxy and Citra doesn't seem to come out that much in this one, unless they're using cryo oils, which of course makes the whole thing very, very juicy. But regardless, yeah, you've got a good mix of like tropical fruit in this one, and a nice kind of juicy, orangey character coming out of this beer. And when you sugar it up, you do actually get just a little touch of that kind of Skittlesy sort of thing that you can often find with this particular beer style. But as I always say, just take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it. That's always half the experience when it comes to different craft beers. But yeah, I think it's about time we taste this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the legendary Hazy Daze, a 6.5% New England IPA from the wonderful Hong Kong Beer Company in Kwun Tong, over in East Kowloon, here in the Hong Kong SAR. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah. There's always just something about this beer that is just really, really enjoyable. This one, it's kind of like a, if there's either this or Hey Hey on tap, I'm always very, very tempted, I will say that. These Hong Kong, the two Hong Kong Beer Company hazy IPAs are just always like, they're always just really on point. This one's kind of interesting. I'm finding it's very, very smooth, but I'm finding this one, usually when I go to Craftissimo, I've already been to Rich Cat before and had a beer or two, but I'm drinking this one with a completely fresh palate this time, which is kind of interesting because the beer comes across as just being slightly drier than I always remember it being. It's just got a bit more bread crust and cracker and things like that to it, but still it has that smoothness that I always associate with Hong Kong Beer Company. But yeah, it gives you everything you want. Lovely, nice kind of bready backbone. There's that wee bit of hoppy character in there. Very smooth, actually. And yeah, you've got that lovely, juicy, fruity character coming out of the beer. So let's just break the flavour down then and describe it for you more in depth, as we always do. So, middle third of your palate then, the backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of woody character to it, and then above that there's a kind of Jacob's cream crackery sort of thing going on. Yeah, so there's definitely that. You've got that white bready bread crust, a little bit of wood, a little bit of kind of Jacob's cream cracker sitting above that. Then there's a very slight layer of like a kind of sweeter wholemeal brown bready character there, and that kind of lingers into the aftertaste and just gives you this little touch of sweet graininess into the beer. But then yeah, above that you get the nice fluffy, fresh, white bready character from the barley malt coming out of this one. And yeah, that one does go together really, really nicely. Almost gives you a very slight sweetness into the aftertaste as well. But yeah. So on top of the barley malt white bready layer, you have the more dense, you've got the more dense wheaty white bready note coming out of the beer. So yeah, the more dense wheaty white bready note is there. Again, that comes across as very smooth. It's only got a very slight bitiness further back on the palate. But remember that generally speaking, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, again, the way that all of this pieces together is really nice. That wheaty white bready character is lovely actually. On top of the wheaty white bready character as well, you have the oaty side of the beer. So down the down the middle line of your palate, you've got some lovely oaty sort of creamy. You've got a lovely oaty kind of creamy character just going down the middle line of your tongue there, and then as you move out toward the edges of your palate a little bit, it gives you a wee bit more of there's a little bit more of a kind of oaty dryness coming out of the beer, which is very, very nice. So yeah, lovely oaty dryness, or just a little touch of oaty dryness there on the very edge. It's mostly creamy because this beer is very, very fresh. Remember, oats can be a good rough indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. Essentially, the creamier they are, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. Very rough, and it's different between European oats and North American oats, but anyway, it is something that you can notice with these beers. But yeah, lovely creamy oaty character down the middle line of your tongue, and then just a little touch of oaty dryness toward the edges of your palate. A little bit of that almost porridgey character, which kind of smoothens the whole beer out. In the dead centre of your palate, you've got that little circle there where you get the Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type flavours. That is of course the alcohol. Then that's just surrounded by a little touch of, yeah, with just a little bit of a kind of biscuity type character. So yeah, the biscuity notes, they are kind of linger into the aftertaste too. But I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of your palate in this beer. It's really, really nicely done. The malty and yeasty backbone in this beer is great. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. There's a kind of brown bready character in the base, the kind of more fluffy barley malt white bread in the middle, and then the more dense wheaty white bready character on top. But the base of that back third of your palate is a nice kind of yeah, it's a nice, yeah, you get a little bit of that kind of bread crusty character, which is a wee bit drier. You've got more of a Jacob's cream crackery sort of note above it. Those are of course a little bit drier too. Then the brown bready layer feels a little bit lighter, taller, more airy. The white bready barley malt bready layer above that again is a little bit lighter, taller, and more airy. Then you've got a more dense the more dense wheaty white bready layer above that, which has a wee bit of bitiness to it, but overall it's pretty damn smooth, to be honest with you. So the yeasty character coming out of the beer, at its core, it feels like it sits on top of the back third of the palate, incidentally. But yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, at its core, it feels like it's a more kind of sweet brown bready sort of character. Round the edge of that, it's a little bit more of a, yeah, it's got a little bit more of a kind of fresh white bready sort of character to it. Then yeah, the very edge of it is a little bit more of a, yeah, it's got a little bit more of a kind of bread crusty and crackery character to it. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is very nice. But yeah, all in all, the way that this one kind of pieces together, I think, is lovely. So yeah, everything, the way that that one goes together, the way that the malty yeasty side of this beer goes together is very nice. And definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. And yeah, I really do like how that how all of that pieces together. So yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So green component first. Back corners of your palate, there's a nice little bit of earthiness in there, but again, it's not too prominent. As you move further forward, you'll maybe pick up the tiniest little bit of yeah, you'll maybe pick up the kind of tiniest little bit of pine resin there, but yeah, very much as you come further forward, it leans more toward a floral aromatic sort of thing, and it's quite oily, in all honesty. So yeah, you've got quite an oily floral aromaticity to this one. Then round the front curve of the tongue, it's just that little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So yeah, interesting stuff on the green component there. But let's go to the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things, just to round off. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get that little bit of bready build-up in there. You can feel the brown bread in the base, the white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty white bready character on top. The base of the front third of your palate, the bread crust, the cracker, the brown bread, white bread, and the smoother wheaty side of things. I think a little bit of the oaty character kind of creeps forward as well. Then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a look at those. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer, for me, it's lovely, very, very smooth, very bright, juicy kind of character coming out of it. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel that little bit of juicy, slightly sharper peach on top. Lots and lots of juicy mango in this one. A wee bit of drier passion fruit as well further back. But as you move further forward into the middle of that front third of your tongue, it's got more of a kind of apricot-y sort of note in the base, maybe papayas as well. A little bit of juicy pineapple. Very, it's quite dry tropical fruit actually that's coming out of this one. Maybe even a little touch of banana. There was one of the more experimental hops recently that had the kind of banana. Was it HBC 1016? Something like that? Or was it 630? It was in one of the beers that I had the other day. But yeah, wonder if could be a little bit of that going on there. But yeah, as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you definitely get a wee bit of a kind of oily, tangerine-y, orangey kind of character coming out of this one. And yeah, I'd say it's not as orangey as I thought it was going to be from the aroma. That's one thing I would say about this beer, where it diverges from what you might expect. But all in all, the way that this one goes together, I think, is is really nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that particular regard. But yeah, I think we've said everything we need to about the flavour of this beer. So let's just round off with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. For me, this one, I mean, it's right in the middle of the spectrum. Mid-bodied. It has a mix of creaminess and kind of cleanliness to this one. If you try the other core range Hong Kong Beer Company beers, they've always got this kind of this real clean mouthfeel to them, actually, which is you know, it's just their kind of trademark almost. So it's got a mix of cleanliness and creaminess to it. Mid-bodied, like I said, very smooth carbonation. IBU wise, I think this is a kind of standard 25-30, which is normal for the New England IPA style. It's a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, and then slightly sweeter on top. And then yeah, you've got a lovely juicy fruity note coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. And as I say, it's kind of a go-to for me. It's nice to do a proper sort of sit-down review of this one and just kind of think a little bit more about what's going on in it. But it changes slightly from batch to batch, but still really solid beer, and one of the Hong Kong beers that I do really recommend you try. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that. This one is the Hazy Daze, a 6.5% New England Hazy IPA from the wonderful Hong Kong Beer Company in Kwun Tong, East Kowloon, here in the Hong Kong SAR. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hong Kong Beer Company as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. I do need to review their other core range beers, but I'll catch you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now. Check out my social media and check out their social media. Ciao.